Welcome to the Angelscapes podcast, where you're encouraged to uncover and develop a direct connection with your soul's power, wisdom, and spiritual intuition that is ready to blossom. We'll explore new ideas, compelling tips, and real steps to help you learn simple spiritual practices. We're a safe place to learn more about accessing your soul's power with education and spiritual wholeness that could bring more clarity to your life. Now here's your host, a practicing medium, Akashic Records practitioner, spirit artist, coach, and mentor, Dr. Reverend Nancy Smith.
So what happened to the Fox sisters? This is part 2 of the young mediums that shocked America. Now they're growing up. Part 3. This is part 3. Thank you for that correction. Now we're going to talk with Robin Reale, Reverend Robin Reale. Hello, this is Angelscapes, and I'm your host, Nancy Smith. We're going to, in the second half of the Fox sisters' life, Robin was going to present some compelling stories of the young women who are now growing up and maturing into their roles as mediums. We're going to be meeting their future husbands and their husbands. And we're also going to see the pressure that they were under. That pressure seemed like it was absolutely impossible. So welcome, Robin.
Thank you
for the third time. And
it's always an honor to be here, Nancy. We have the greatest conversations. So thanks.
Oh, we do. Yeah, we do. And before the show, we have these great conversations, and then we forget to come on the show. So anyways, I'm just so thrilled. And I know that people are really happy to hear all the things that you have to say. So you'll so let's get going. We wanted to do a correction to a pronunciation.
Yeah, a pronunciation and a spelling. So I started off talking about the Fox sisters, the advent of spiritualism, March 31st, 1848 at, I think it's 1510 Hydesville Road. Now, the peddler who was communicating with them for a century, people have said that his name was Charles B. Rosna. And some people said Rosna, some people said Rosma. However, Marilyn Autry has unearthed some documentation that says the peddler's name was Charles B. Kresmer, Cresmer. And for more information on Charles B. Kresmer, you can go to Marilyn Autry's website. And her last name is Awtry. Some people have asked about that. It's a W right after the A. And she has written several books on the history of spiritualism. Ron Nagy's the curator of the museum at Lilydale, has also written several fascinating books on the history of spiritualism. So he's over at Lilydale in the museum, but you can also find him on Facebook and online. He's written some fascinating books. So
wonderful. We'll have to look that up, and I recommend everybody.
Resources.
Yeah.
So shall we rock and roll here?
We should rock and roll. Let's go for it. And
all right. So Nancy, when we last were chatting, we left off with the Fox sisters were on tour, and they had gone to Ohio, 1851. Remembering that they had won, I think we left off where they had won $10,000 in damages against the Burr brothers, Burr, and they had been harassing them through the press, and Leah just fought back, and they took it to court, and the Fox sisters won.
10,000. A lot of money back then.
In 1851.
Yeah.
So, so then we move into, that was July 1851, September 1851, Leah Fox Fish marries Calvin Brown. Now, this is her second husband. And they just have the rest of their tour through Ohio is absolutely triumphant. But remember, they have gone town to town to town and across New York State, down the Hudson, and now they're back up. They're heading west and then going along Lake Erie and scooting back up the other side. Something that I find interesting, a lot of people only talk about the seances with Abraham Lincoln, right? However, before that, back in 1851, the Fox sisters gave a seance in Ohio to the United States President Garfield.
Let's talk about Garfield.
Garfield, yeah, US President Garfield. He was devoted to the Fox sisters, devoted to the cause of spiritualism. I know, get out of town. And
Yeah, who
you
knew?
can find out more information on the National Park Service website about US President Garfield. So the Fox sisters went to his home in Ohio and held seances. And again, he was a very big supporter.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
people talk about Lincoln, but you know, they were hardworking touring mediums, and they really made the rounds. And because of Leah, I mean, she was politically savvy, she was savvy with the media. She sort of carried this into a religion. Well, she didn't carry it all the way, but
She carried it into a movement for sure.
thank you. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. That's
Now-
the perfect word.
Do you know what they talked about with President Garfield?
I do not know. I don't remember. I don't remember in any case. In any case, I don't think much is written about that. If somebody wanted to write a book about that, I'm sure there's a lot of information to research.
Okay.
Just a thought, putting it out there for you historians sitting at home. So they moved down from Ohio into Pennsylvania. And in 1851, they were in Pittsburgh. 3 Fox sisters held seances. Then after that, they returned up through New York State back to Rochester, their home. Then January 1852, they're back in Manhattan, New York City. The address was 78 West 26th Street for people who like mapping out the Fox sisters. Leah rented a brownstone, and Kate and Maggie and Leah held seances, 2 seances a day, $1 a person, and they called it Sit for Raps. The rapping.
Okay. Sit for raps. Wow.
Yeah, called it Sit for Raps. Now, 1852, interestingly enough, Horace Greeley, who was the editor of the New York Tribune, you know, he had given them incredible publicity about their first tour that we talked about last month in New York City, where they had stayed at the Barnum Hotel. Horace Greeley is the person credited with giving spiritualism its name. He called it modern spiritualism.
Oh,
so,
okay.
But before he sort of coined that phrase, he coined a lot of phrases. Go west, young man, grow up with the nation. You know, Horace Greeley, remember, he ran for president. He was in the thick of things. So the term modern spiritualism is attributed to Horace Greeley. All right, October 9th. Now, here's a pivotal point. October 9th, 1852, Philadelphia, in Webb's Union Hotel on Arch Street, in the bridal suite, Mrs. Fox took Maggie there to hold seances, all right? So Mrs. Fox and her daughter Maggie are giving seances, Sit for Raps, in the bridal suite, which they've rented. And who comes in? Dr. Elijah Kent Kane, who falls in love. He's a famous Arctic explorer, very famous guy. There's a book he wrote. There's books about him. He's part of Philadelphia Who's Who, his family. Very priggish sort of folks. Anyway, he begins a 4-year courtship of Maggie. And he's not very nice. He lavishes presents on her, and they write love letters back and forth. But in some of the love letters, he tells her, "You will never be my equal. Yeah, you will never be raised to the heights of me and my life and my family." Anyway.
What are you trying to say, dude? You trying to win me over? I don't think so.
Yeah, not right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
no. But he keeps telling Maggie to quit spiritualism.
Oh,
Yes. And he keeps trying to tell her she's better than Leah, she's better than Kate. Anyway.
what is with these men? Seriously. I love you. I love what you're doing. Change everything for me. What is that? Sorry.
Nancy, I haven't figured it out. I'm single. If somebody has the answer, the key, please inform me here. So he keeps coming back sitting for raps, but he's chasing Maggie. They go for buggy rides with chaperones. In any case, in January 1853, Kate Fox joins Maggie and their mother in Pennsylvania, and Maggie and Kate sit for raps. Back January, so now we're into January 1853. They're in Manhattan, New York, on 10th Street. Maggie, Kate, and Mrs. Fox, of course, always the chaperone. They rejoin Leah and Wisconsin Governor Talmadge. Wisconsin Governor Talmadge is a key player here in so many reasons. He's a convert to spiritualism, and he arranges their trip to Washington, D.C. So he arranges their trip to Washington, D.C., which Kate has written about. And Kate just said, they're in these dark rooms and these senators are ogling her. And, they're some of them are drunk. And remember, Kate's still quite young. And it was a horrible experience for Kate. But, she's told, you've got to be on your best behavior. We want credibility. So anyway, February 1853 in Washington, D.C. on F Street, 3 doors down on West 13th Street. Maggie and Kate hold seances with their mother, a chaperone. Many more politicians come, and they hold many seances at the home of Mrs. Sullivan, a supporter. In 1853, President Franklin Pierce's wife, Jane, has a reading with Maggie to contact her 11-year-old son in spirit. So we've got President Garfield, we've got Franklin Pierce, President of the United States, Franklin Pierce, his wife Jane is coming for readings. And then again, later on, we have the Lincolns.
So there was a precedent for Abraham Lincoln to see a spiritualist.
Yeah, a lot of people think, boom, it came out of the blue, but not so much.
Okay.
All right.
This is an important little piece in this historical event.
And I've been told that there is a plaque over one room in the White House called the Seance Room.
Oh.
And do I know for sure? I do not know. Someone who is politically connected told me this. And so, if you ever get a tour of the White House, check it out. But apparently there's still a plaque, and some presidents had tried to have it removed, but it was brought back because of its historic significance.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good.
So I'd love for someone to check it out. Anyway, so May 4th, 1853, we're back in Manhattan. Calvin Brown, Leah's second husband, he passes into spirit. And that same time, Dr. Kane promises to marry Maggie on his return from the Arctic. He's going sailing to the Arctic. And Kane insists on keeping their engagement a secret.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, come on, dude. Maybe that's in her favor, but
No, it doesn't end up being. But well, anyway, so yeah. So Leah moves out of that house and she goes to live in Irving Street. And then she goes to live in Ludlow Street. Anyway, a lot of moving around. Summer 1853 to October 1855, Crooksville, Pennsylvania. It's a suburb of Philly, of Philadelphia. Maggie is placed in this home by Elijah Kent Kane. I believe it's his aunt, with his aunt, hires a tutor. And so from the summer of 1853 until October 1855, Elijah Kent Kane convinces Maggie to leave all the spiritualism. He says, I will hire a tutor for you. You will be sort of like his ward.
Mhm.
But they're secretly engaged. And she goes and she lives there. And he goes off to, he returns to the Arctic and says he hopes his parents will accept her when he returns. So June 1854, Manhattan. Now we have the founding of the Society for the Diffusion of Spiritual Knowledge. The Society for the Diffusion of Spiritual Knowledge. And Kate Fox, this is unprecedented, is paid an annual salary as a medium of $1,200 a year.
Wow.
Now, she's only 16 years old, and she is a full-time medium. And yeah, and so people are coming to her for seances, to sit for raps. And Emma Harding, who ended up Emma Harding Britton, she's an author. She had been an actress. She's British, came to the United States, and worked as a medium, trance medium. She's written some really good historic books on the history of spiritualism. She said that there was a time when she and Kate Fox were both giving mediumship readings in the same building. And she said, poor Kate was very patient, but exhausted day after day, little young Kate calling out the alphabet and waiting for spirit to rap. A, B, C, or person after person after person. It was just like a mill running people through Kate. Hours on end. I mean, I can't imagine doing that. So, in any case, so
Can we just step back just a second? In the raps mediumship, it was all just how many raps equals a letter. And there was no.
So they could do yes, no questions.
Okay.
Okay. And then spirit would rap. So 1 rap for yes, 2 raps for no.
Okay.
And they could start out with yes, no questions. Then they get into the alphabet. And they would say, now Kate would tell the spirit, I'm going to read the alphabet. I want you to spell out your first name. So if someone's name was Bernie, Kate would say A, B, and on B, she would hear a rap.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to do the next letter. A, B, C, D, E. And then on E, she'd hear a rap.
Okay. Wow.
So that is how they did it to get accurate evidence.
Now, Emma Harding mediumship, was that rap or was that something else?
It was rap. Apparently it was rap too, but
Okay.
she was famous for being a trance medium.
Okay.
Yes.
So in a trance, just for people who don't know what trance mediumship is, explain that.
Well, there's different levels of trance. There's overshadowing, and I am not a trance medium.
Yeah.
Or I'll say yet. Maybe it's in my future. So you can be overshadowed, and spirit can give you an impression of something, and then you can or you can be in trance and spirit talks through you, but spirit's using your voice, your cadence, your vocabulary. And then for some people who are then in full trance, they take over your voice box, and your voice changes. Your physical, I have seen this, and
I've seen that too.
Your physical appearance completely changes. Your mannerisms change. And I had the honor of being in the presence of a very gifted trance medium, Ann Gallagher, in Massachusetts.
Yes. Yeah, I've sat with Ann.
Ann used to sit for free for people, and people would come to her door at all hours. She had to finally set some boundaries because she never charged. And parents who had lost children would come to her. And so Anne firmly believed every trance, every part of mediumship, every part of her was for healing. Absolutely for healing. To her, every part of her mediumship and the religion of spiritualism was for healing. And anyway.
So and that's Emma Harding started to go in that direction, away from the raps, as well as doing the raps. Okay.
And I believe she did the raps as well. But I cannot think of, I'm trying to think of a book. I can't think of a book where I would have read that. So I should probably back up and say, certainly she did trance, possibly raps. But I can't think of a reference.
You can't verify it. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. But it is interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've been very interested in seeing how mediumship progressed from the raps and then the next step. So Emma Harding, we all know you know for sure she did trance. So there was a step there now with this modern spiritualist movement.
Yes.
Okay. Very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Moving along to 1855 on 50 East 22nd Street in New York City, Mrs. Fox, Leah, Maggie, and Kate lived together. When Dr. Kane returned from his Arctic expedition, he again forbids Maggie from participating in seances. So he's back from his Arctic exploration, and he tells Maggie, you are not going to do seances. 1856, Mrs. Fox, Maggie, Kate, and Emma take the train to Canada for the summer. Mrs. Fox's married daughter was still living in Canada. Remember, Kate and Maggie were born in Consacon, Canada. Anyway, so Mrs. Fox's married daughter, still living in Canada, is not involved in spiritualism at all. And Kate holds seances for their former neighbors in Canada. All right, 1856. Maggie Fox and Elijah Kane are married.
Oh, they did
privately by mutual consent in a private home ceremony. Kane is afraid of being cut off financially from his family's wealth and society. He tells Maggie to keep the marriage secret until he makes a profit from his Arctic exploration books. And then Kane sails for England. That's the last time Maggie sees him. He never registered their marriage legally, like in town hall records, never got a legal marriage license, didn't tell his parents. What happens? Yeah, that's 1856. February 1857, Havana, Cuba. Elijah Kent Kane, his family, he becomes incredibly sick when he's in England. His family sends him to Havana, Cuba to recover. His family refuses to recognize Maggie as his wife. His funeral is one of the largest funerals in American history.
Wow.
Without Maggie.
Oh, poor child. Poor thing. Oh my goodness.
So, something I forgot to say was that April 1854 was the first petition to the United States Congress. Senator James Shields, a Democrat from Illinois, requested an inquiry into the truth of spiritualism. He had 13,000 signatures. They had 13,000 people who wanted to know, by asking Congress to request the truth of spiritualism, they were asking them to say something positive about it. That was the method they used. And the very first signature was Senator, he became a senator, he was a senator at one time, and he was Wisconsin's governor, Governor Talmadge. So
Talmadge.
they had met him, and then he introduced them to everybody in Washington, D.C., and then his signature was the very first on the petition for Congress. So, all right, moving along here, gracious. All right, we're not quite barreling yet into the Civil War. So Maggie is devastated. She's drinking heavily. Yeah, Maggie's drinking quite heavily. And some people thought she was taking laudanum, which is, I believe, an opium derivative. So she was Maggie had checked out for quite a while.
Well, yeah. You know, that pressure, and then this man and the deceits. Oh,
right.
And she's young, so by then she's like 17.
No, Maggie's probably, well, she's still young. How old was Maggie then? I don't know. We can figure it out at the end.
Okay, but she's still pretty young. She's still a babe.
Still pretty young. She's still a babe, absolutely.
Yeah.
So May 27th, 1857, they come to Boston. Leah takes Kate to Reale with New England mediums, and there are several, maybe down the road in the fall, I could put together just a chat with you, Nancy, on Boston mediums. Boston, Massachusetts is a hub.
It is. It's a crazy hub. Yes.
It's a hub. People don't realize. I mean, New York City, yes. Hydesville, yes. Lilydale, yes. Cassadaga, Florida, yes. Camp Chesterfield. Boston was a hub that kept a lot of it together. Unbelievable. Anyway, but that's down the road. So Leah takes Kate to Reale with New England mediums because there was a challenge from Harvard University.
Challenge. Okay.
Yeah. They were testing mediums. So of course, Leah, brings Kate, not Maggie, because Maggie is lost in grief, as
Yeah.
one would imagine. So Pauline Davis, who was a very famous suffragette, Pauline Davis finances their trip. Okay, Pauline Davis I'm thinking Pauline Davis might have lived in Rhode Island. I'm not sure, but anyway, Pauline Davis finances their trip, and they're tested in the Albion building, which is on the corner of Tremont and Beacon Streets.
Okay.
Anyway,
I think I've been there.
yeah, if you've been to downtown Boston,
Oh, lots. Yeah.
I mean, it's not far from the old Filene's basement.
I worked down there, as a matter of fact. Yes, we're
Lucky you,
yeah.
man. I love that place. All right. August. So moving forward. So it was a very disappointing trip. They did not find Kate credible.
Get out.
Get out of town. Totally. I know, right? What's wrong with those fellas? August 1858 at St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church in New York City on Barclay Street, if you ever want to find it, Maggie Fox, now she takes her husband's name, Maggie Fox Kane, is baptized as into the Catholic faith. Because
what? Yeah.
Maggie grew up a Methodist. The Foxes were Methodist. Right. Then sort of this movement of modern spiritualism. But Elijah Kent Kane, who was not a Catholic, he wanted Maggie to go to Catholic church. Oh, go to Catholic church. Who knows? Anyway, so Maggie goes and is baptized goes through as an adult Catholic baptism and becomes a Catholic in the memory or honor of her deceased husband. In the meantime, Maggie, who has nobody to support her, right? Kane had been supporting her. She accepts Kate's money, and Kate's working herself to the bone and also drinking. Right.
Oh, Kate was also drinking.
Kate was also drinking. So she accepts her sister's money, right? But she is too good to work in the field of mediumship.
Maggie's now too good to work in the field of mediumship.
She doesn't. Oh, Elijah, she called him Lish. Lish wouldn't have liked it. And so, but Kate's money did her well. Okay. Moving forward, November 2nd, 1858, in New York City, Leah hits the jackpot. She marries wealthy insurance magnate Daniel Underhill. And he's got beaucoup bucks and very, very well respected. And he's a spiritualist.
Oh.
They get married at Horace Greeley's Manhattan brownstone at 35 East 19th Street. That is where Daniel Underhill and Leah got married.
Oh, good. Oh my gosh. Were they happy?
Yes.
Oh, good. She deserved that.
He just adored her. Anyway.
Yeah. So the pressure, just a little bit of back to the drinking and the pressure. Now, I can't imagine the pressure that Maggie and Kate are under doing all of these different things. So
I've never read that Leah drank too much, just Maggie and Kate.
Kate, right.
The kids, I mean, they started out as kids, basically.
Right.
So, so Leah ends, or Leah takes a hiatus on public mediumship. And they live in a brownstone in New York City. She has maids and parlor maids, and she has all the intelligentsia from around the world, ambassadors. She entertains everybody. She's a who's who now. And Leah and Daniel lived at 232 West 37th Street in New York City. So anyway, then January 1859, on 15 Barclay Street, Maggie Fox Kane gets her own apartment. So Maggie's on Barclay Street in New York City. She's in her own apartment. Kate lives with her parents. And where do you think they live? Kate lives, now her father has moved down to Manhattan. Kate, her mother, and her father live in Horace Greeley's brownstone in Manhattan.
No kidding.
Get out of
Wow.
it. Yes. Now, Kate has a really busy mediumship practice, and Leah sends her to St. Louis. Yeah, Kate went to St. Louis to sit for reps. I mean, people think this happened overnight. All of a sudden, you know, March 31st, 1848, it didn't happen overnight. And it was hard work. And travel back in those days was not easy and probably not very comfortable. So,
Yeah.
okay. So Kate goes off to St. Louis. And 1861 to 1866, back in New York City, Kate Fox, now this is curious, Kate Fox holds almost 400 seances.
Oh, this poor girl.
For wealthy banker Charles Livermore. Charles Livermore made a lot of money during the Civil War. Okay, and remembering the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Okay, 1861 was when the Southern states seceded from the Union. And 1862, Mary Todd Lincoln wanted to contact her son Willie, and President Abraham Lincoln attended seances in the White House. And then 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation, medium Nettie Colburn Maynard reported spirit had influenced president to emancipate the slaves. 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg, 51,000 soldiers passed over. And in Boston, the biggest journal, the Banner of Light in Boston, they had, gosh, what is her name now? Fanny. I can't think of it off the top of my head. They had a very famous medium. Her name is escaping me. They hired her as a medium and the Banner of Light, and she would write down messages that she would receive from spirit, and the Banner of Light would publish them. They were messages from soldiers killed in battles in the Civil War.
Oh my goodness.
And so so they would publish them. And because, you know, so many of them were buried in mass graves or never identified.
I know, it's such.
I'd imagine 51,000 soldiers passing in one battle. You know, by the time the Civil War ended, 623,000 lives were taken.
It was nasty battle.
Nasty battle. You know, and I mean, that is a lot. And yet, you know, when we think that slaves were freed, think of how many people died while they were slaves in the South. I mean, I don't even know what that
Yeah,
means.
I mean, yeah, totally.
Right?
If you
People,
compare
we talk about how many people died in the Civil War, but how many
slaves died.
How many
Just coming on the boats, the ships coming over, never mind enslaved. And I do have one question that somebody asked quickly. Did Andrew Jackson Davis ever get to meet President Lincoln?
I
I
did
think
not know that. Sojourner Truth, African-American spiritualist who was born a slave, she got to meet.
President.
Yes. And my understanding from letters, Amy Post and Isaac Post met Lincoln, or at least corresponded with them. You can learn a lot of information from the letters. It's on the University of Rochester's website. They have a special section on an historic section, and you can ask permission and access all of their the Amy and Isaac Post letters. We talked about them either in the first
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah, we didn't go over them too much. You and I had a long conversation
Oh,
about them, but it's totally fascinating, the connection between spiritualism and
yeah. Do you know, I'll take a look, whoever is asking that question. If I find an answer, I will I'll send Nancy an email, and then she can
I could
answer.
post it. Yeah.
She'll post it.
Yeah. I want to go back a second here. Because you mentioned Boston being a hub of mediums. Now, was mediumship happening before the Fox sisters connected
Yes.
with Charles?
Happening for thousands of years.
But I meant popularly, like the modern spiritualist movement. How many mediums were active before, and then how many mediums became active after? Of course, really termed.
Good question. You know, we had some trance mediums. You know, Andrew Jackson Davis was a trance medium.
True.
And as we talked about before, he absolutely was receiving information in trance in the 1840s, and he wrote his book downloaded from trance. Nature's Divine Principles and Spirit Revelations. He wrote that in he wrote that in 1849. But he worked on that for 18 months, I believe.
Okay.
And his friend Fishbaugh was the scribe.
Okay.
And he downloaded it in book form. I have it. It's like 700 pages.
Wow.
It's an intense read. But
it is.
That's for another day.
Yeah. But so getting back to the mediumship was picking up before the Fox sisters started their rapping. Trance mediumship.
Yeah, trance. They were always raps. Matter of fact, in England, in Germany, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote about raps in the 1500s in England and Germany.
Okay.
In his books, he wrote two sort of seminal books on the history of spiritualism. I think I've got them back there on my shelf.
Yeah, I have mine over there, but yeah.
Yeah, but volume 1 and volume 2, and I believe it's probably in volume 1 where he begins to talk about it. You've got the Oracle of Delphi. Do you know, going back, and the inscription over the place where the Oracle of Delphi did readings, I believe it said, know thyself. And I think that's an important thing always to remember in mediumship of any kind. Mediumship, healing, that we do. Know thyself. It's really important to know.
Absolutely, so true. So
the other thing, just a moment. The Salem witch trials here in Massachusetts, up in Salem, the end of the 1600s. After that, who's going to come forward, especially in England, and say, oh, hey, guys, I'm getting communication from the spirit world. you
So
know,
that put the kibosh on a little bit of that development, I'm sure.
right? I mean, this is the land of Plymouth Rock, the Puritans, they still have reenactments, so I can't imagine being front and center and after the Salem witch trials. I don't think so. So it really, given that, imagine how gutsy these folks were, how gutsy they were, how gutsy Andrew Jackson Davis was,
Oh, yeah.
Emma Harding, how gutsy any of these folks were. Anyway.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for answering that question, Dallas. So let's go back to
Oh, okay. So where we are, so let's see. Kate's holding seances in private for Charles Livermore, and Kate materializes. A lot of people don't realize this. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot written about Kate materializing. Kate materializes Estelle. Estelle was Charles Livermore's wife, and he was madly in love with her. So he pays her. And now this is sort of a key point. So Kate has moved from raps, the rapping.
okay.
Right. And then to ectoplasmic materialization.
Which means that Livermore could see his wife's face or full body. Was it standing next to her? Was it overshadowing her?
I believe it would be her full body. I could be. I'm trying to think of the details.
So we would
realize to the point he knew it was his wife.
Oh my gosh. So that was, nowadays we call that physical mediumship.
Yes, thanks. Yeah. All right. Now imagine, so this is 1861 to 1866. Imagine now mediums are springing up, certainly New England, into New York, Pennsylvania, out St. Louis, and even out to California. P.B. Randolph, Paschal B. Randolph, took a lot of the mediumship and trance out to California. Anyway, but okay, so a lot of people now are they have home circles. They're setting up societies for the diffusion of information. And there's a society set up in New York City. Now imagine you're a medium and people, you're getting money, you're making some money from it. And now people say, can you materialize? Kate Fox materializes. Can you do that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Kate and her spirit guides have raised the bar. All right. And so this really opens the door for a lot of fraudulent mediumship because the stakes are so high, flickering lights, drapes, sheets coming down from chandeliers, all kinds of things. People in, and wearing a sheet coming by, all kinds of, right? So, yes. So people say, why did people, why did people start fraudulent mediumship? Well, one, they wanted to make a living. So people found they could make a living. Also, as the Fox sisters did, if you were into, what's the word? Social climbing. People could rise up the social ladder through mediumship.
Kidding. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Think of well, look at Do you think, Kate, do you think any of these mediums would have met any of these presidents?
No, of course not.
So, right? So all of
Right.
a
So,
sudden, here you are.
yeah.
It's different nowadays. It's different nowadays. I wouldn't be surprised that presidents and many politicians would seek help of very credible mediums. In any case, but back then it was still new. And so anyway, and you know, thinking this family is sort of itinerant. They go from here to there, wherever their father can find a job and support them. And so they were not part of high society. So I'll imagine being a medium and then being invited into someone's beautiful living room, or, you know,
Or their brownstone.
or the brown.
You could live here. Yeah. Crazy time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, anyway, so people start imitating Kate. Were some of them truly materializing spirit? I imagine so. But it's sort of like the beginning, sort of around this time.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on, 1862, Maggie Fox lands in Orphans Court. Orphans Court in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because so Maggie doesn't get a cent from Elijah Kane's family, and she keeps going to them and going to them and going to them. And so Maggie's friends hire an attorney for a lawsuit to obtain half of Elijah Kane's estate. Kane's family refuses to accept Maggie's claim as Elijah's widow. Maggie's claim as Elijah's widow. Anyway, Maggie loses the case and becomes even more depressed and an absolute recluse. December 1864. So we're jumping ahead a couple of years. New York City. So Maggie is back living in an apartment in New York City. I imagine that Kate is probably supporting her, maybe Horace Greeley. Horace Greeley finds Maggie incoherent, wandering the streets of New York City in a snowstorm.
Oh,
and
wow.
Maggie is looking for her husband.
Oh, no.
Maggie, now remember, he was an Arctic explorer.
Yes.
So Maggie told Horace Greeley, I always find Elijah in snowstorms. Greeley takes Maggie home. It's pretty sad.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
So January 5th, 1865, New York City, the Fox sisters' dad, John Fox, dies or passes into spirit. In August 1865, Margaret, their mother, she passes into spirit of typhoid.
Oh,
so
wow.
The Fox, Maggie and Kate and Leah lose both parents in 1865.
Oh, my goodness.
So 1865, Kate is finally treated for alcoholism at the Taylor's Swedish Movement Cure Spa. It was at 38th Street and 6th Avenue in New York City. The Taylor's Swedish Movement Cure Spa. Maggie refused treatment. So 17 years of being plied and toasted with alcohol really took its toll on Maggie. And Horace Greeley is one of the people who paid for her to stay there.
Okay.
So in 1865 in New York City, Leah claims it was at her house. Robert Dale Owen pens chapters of Footfalls on the Boundary of Another World in Leah's home. Leah claimed that. It's another seminal book. 1866, Margaret Fox Kane, as she refers to herself, in an attempt for independence, she's absolutely impoverished. She's been completely denigrated by the Kane family. She publishes her memoirs and letters from Dr. Elijah Kent Kane, her husband. And they are called The Love Life of Dr. Kane. And I have a copy of it. It's in print. Yeah.
What does it say? Is it good?
Oh, it's got the letters. It's sad. It's heart-wrenching. It's absolutely heart-wrenching. Yeah, it's tough to read. Very, very sad.
So sorry to hear that.
So, yeah. So she tried. She went to the family and said, I'm going to publish these letters unless you give me my money. They didn't. So tough nuggies. Yeah, she, oops.
Did she make any money from this letter, the book?
I imagine she made some.
Okay, yeah.
1867 on 44th Street, New York City, Maggie and Kate share an apartment. Kate gets out of treatment at the Taylors. Kate keeps up an active mediumship practice. Maggie occasionally assists in seances and gave private readings. Then it became overwhelming. Kate returns to the Swedish movement cure, the Taylors, again for treatment. But the Taylors asked Kate for seances. So Kate, and there's a book written, the Taylors wrote a book about Kate and her seances while she was being treated for alcoholism at their center. Yeah. And Kate would go into trance and she could write with both hands 2 different messages from spirit, and she would write them backwards. So you hold them up to the mirror to read them. Unbelievable. The things. Yeah, Kate was amazing, but she was very depressed. But anyway, I want to get to Kate's love life, but I'll get there. But not yet. March 31st, 1868, in the Everett Room in Manhattan was the 20th anniversary of the spiritualist movement. Leah gets Kate and Maggie to make an appearance. On that same day, back here in Massachusetts, in Boston, at the Music Hall, Andrew Jackson Davis, his second wife, Mary Fenn Davis, and Dr. Henry Gardner, who was president of the American Association of Spiritualists. Yes, they had this organization back in 1868, and it fizzled out. But they had a big commemoration, their 20th anniversary. Back in Rochester, New York, in Corinthian Hall, Amy and Isaac Post held up their end, and they had a 20th anniversary celebration. Amy and Isaac Post, George Willits, Reverend Jervis, they officiated.
Okay.
Corinthian Hall was the first public place where they demonstrated. 1869 to 1892 in Manhattan, we have the writing of the Taylors' diaries of Kate's spirit messages, the Fox Taylor record. 1871, New York City, Kate's still living with the Taylors. Maggie is still living on her own. Both have periods of abstinence and periods of drinking. Maggie is back self-supporting by resuming a busy mediumship practice.
Oh, she went back to it.
Yeah. Then Kate gets a break. Remember, she'd been giving she gave 400 seances.
Yeah.
Livermore. Charles Livermore wants to give back to Kate, and also Kate's getting very attached to Charles Livermore. She actually falls in love.
Mm.
And so this is what I've read. So Charles Livermore says, I am going to send you to England with a chaperone, and I'm going to have you introduced to all the most prestigious lords and ladies in England. And you don't have to work. And by the way, here's a ton of money. You can go to a tailor and have an entirely new, what's the word, trousseau made. So Kate and Maggie says goodbye, and Kate gets on the boat and sails to England. So that's October 7th, 1871, she leaves for England. By 1872, Kate Fox is having, now she doesn't have to, but she's having seances with very honorable, very famous Daniel Douglas Home, very prestigious medium in England. And in England, Kate meets her soon-to-be husband.
Oh.
Kate meets, goodness gracious now, Henry
Jenkins?
Yes, thank you. Henry Jenkins Esquire, who is a count, who's also a count. But I'm thinking I think his royal title is from Germany, not from England. And so she meets him when she gets to England, and he falls in love with her. She is sober, and she is beautiful, and she apparently has exquisite taste. She's in this simple but exquisitely tailored gown, and they meet at a dinner party. He falls in love. So he courts her, and then it's overwhelming for her. She goes on a bender, and she all but dies. Her chaperone takes her to Paris to recuperate. And so they're recuperating over in France so that nobody can see them. Because when Charles Livermore wrote the letters to present Kate Fox to society in England, he made no mention that she was an alcoholic.
Okay. Oh.
Right. And imagine how tempting. So Kate's there, and she goes on a bender and almost dies. And her chaperone brings her back, takes care of her, but she also sequesters her away in France. When Kate is better, they go back to England. No one's the wiser. Anyway, and so Henry Jenkins is courting. Kate's back, and he falls in love with Kate. Now, Kate keeps holding him off until she hears that banker Charles Livermore is going to remarry.
Oh, she's beholding to him on some level.
Well, I think she just thought somehow, I think she was in love with him.
Oh.
Remember, she played his wife for 400 seances.
It's true. It's true.
How hard is that?
I would totally fall in love with him. And he was in love with his wife, not in love with Kate.
Not in love with Kate. And he's the one who sent her to create some distance, but he also was very grateful to Kate. I mean, he paid her, but he was very grateful. And he wanted her to start over. He also wanted to separate her from Maggie.
They were bad influences on each other, you think?
I don't know what to say about that. One,
Yeah.
people wrote and said that Maggie was a bad influence. What the truth of it, I don't know. Anyway, so back on the ranch in Boston, February 1872, Maggie Fox Kane gives private readings to Mrs. Linder, who is Mary Todd Lincoln,
Oh,
to contact President Lincoln in spirit. So, all right, December 14th, 1872. So Henry Jenkin, Esquire, or Count Jenkin, proposes to Kate. They have gone, excuse me, they're at this estate, and he asked her to come out into the garden. And he is in love with her, and she says, I can't marry you, I'm a drunk.
okay.
And he says, I've never seen you drink. She says, I'm a drunk. I don't know what kind of wife I'd be. He says, I've never seen it. So he's so in love with her, and they get married. They get married December 14th, 1872 in England at St. Marylebone Parish in London. And they have a wedding breakfast at 45 York Place, Putnam Square. And they say that there were wrappings on the table. Anyway, is that there? So Spirit was like, yeah. Wrap up. All right. September 19th, 1873, Kate's in bliss. She's not drinking. She gets pregnant. She doesn't have to sit with drunk men in dark rooms and seances, right? Her life is great. She's got servants. He's wealthy. The other thing, Henry Jenkin is an international attorney, and he won a very famous case of a man. I think he wanted to put his wife away into a mental institution, and she was a spiritualist. He won this case. And it's written about, it might be in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's books. Okay. Anyway, it's a very famous case, and Henry Jenkin won it. Anyway, okay, so they have September 19th, 1873, Kate and Henry have their first son. His name is Ferdinand Dietrich Lowenstern Jenkin. And they call him Ferdy, and he was born with a caul over his head. He has the gift. All right. And at the time, they're living at a very posh 53 Brompton Crescent Court in London. 1873 in the UK, Kate gives a seance with William Stanton Moses, another very famous, highly regarded medium in England. All right. Then 8 December 1873, on the seaside in Brighton, England, they say 3-month-old Ferdy says, Mama, darling, Mama. 3-month-old. Anyway, that's what they say. 1874, Kate Fox Jenkins' mediumship is successfully tested by Sir William Crookes. And he was a Nobel Prize winner. And he did a lot of testing on mediums, and he proclaimed Kate Fox Jenkins the real deal.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice.
A Nobel Prize winner. November 1874, Kate and her son Ferdy sail on the boat Helvetia, 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 from the UK to New York City. Kate is pregnant. They stay with Leah and her husband. Then January 1879, New York City, Henry Jenkins Jr. is born. And in May, Kate's husband joins them in New York City, and then the whole family returns to London.
Oh my goodness.
Then 1876 to 1878, Maggie is sober and spends 2 years with Kate in England. 1878, at The Hague in Holland, Molly starts a European tour of her mediumship. So how people say, how did this mediumship get around? Well, they traveled widely. Also, there's a medium and healer from Boston, Barbara Hayden. And Mrs. Hayden went to England. She was the first, I believe, rapping medium from the United States to England. She was over there before Kate. And there's a delightful, delicious book written just about her. It's a great book. Anyway, all right. Again, powerhouse folks coming out of Boston. 1879 in Philadelphia. Now Maggie comes back to the States, is hired by Henry Siebert as a medium for investigations and seances. Maggie, it is in essence, Siebert is an older gentleman, believes in all of this, but he puts Maggie on this pedestal as a high priestess. And he insists that Maggie contact every martyr, every saint, every famous sage, every ruler that Siebert can think of. And she's really uncomfortable doing that, right? That's not what she's about. And she quits. She goes back to Manhattan, and she has lots of money. She's comfortable, and she redecorates her Victorian rooms in Manhattan. 1881, another shoe drops. In London, Kate's husband, Henry, passes into spirit.
Oh, no.
Kate is not given Henry's German inheritance.
No. Wow.
Yeah. She's beyond, she doesn't know what to do. However, 1882, she's got some money to get by. She is invited to Russia. Kate and her 2 sons are invited by Alexander Aksakoff, who was a big fan of Andrew Jackson Davis.
Wow.
So Aksakoff, a fan of Davis, hears that Kate's in England, her husband is passed. He sends her correspondence and says, will you come to Russia and give spirit advice for Tsar Alexander III's safe coronation?
Wow.
So Kate goes to St. Petersburg, has a lot of seances, proclaims the spirits say, yeah, it's a good thing to do. Yeah, you can, this is an auspicious date, blah, blah. Okay, he can be crowned. So he was. Then June 1882, Cassadaga Lake Free Association, which is now Lilydale Assembly, not Cassadaga in Florida.
Okay.
So Maggie Fox Kane visits this spiritualist camp, which later became Lilydale.
Yeah.
So Maggie made it there. November 1883, Philadelphia, West Washington Square is the home of Siebert Commission, and the chairman, Horace Furness, tests Maggie. And he says that Maggie's raps are false, that she could be wrapping, spirit wraps could be coming from her toes or her legs or her knees. He says it's false. Then 1885, in New York City, Leah Fox Fish Brown Underhill publishes her book, The Missing Link in Modern Spiritualism. It's worth reading, definitely worth reading. But keeping in mind, it's from Leah's point of view. And in the mix of all of this is women's suffrage. And remembering Victoria Woodhull, a big suffragist and a major spiritualist, in 1872, she runs against Horace Greeley and General Grant, as we know, for president. Grant won.
It was quite the story.
Yeah. And remember, Victoria Woodhull and her sister were the first women owners of a stock brokerage company in the United States. And she was also an abolitionist and spiritualist. Okay, so Leah publishes this book in the fall of 1885. Kate and her sons return to New York City. They live with Leah and Daniel Underhill. May of the next year, 1886, Kate is drinking again, and she goes back to the tailor's spa for alcoholism and depression. And spiritualist historians already by 1886 are beginning to write about Kate and defining her legacy in print. That's going on already. July 1886, Kate leaves her sons with friends in New York City. She leaves the spa, leaves her sons, and she travels to Rochester, and she stays at the Hotel Brunswick and holds seances. However, my goodness, she gets drunk and she's jailed for drunkenness. She returns to New York City, and she and her sons move out of Leah's. March 22nd, 1888, in London, Dr. H. Wadsworth entices Maggie to practice mediumship in the UK. She is healthy, not drinking, and lured to the UK by great benefits. However, 1888 in London, the Catholic clergy say, Maggie, not so fast. It's not God's will for you to do this. Maggie listens to them. Imagine. May 4th, 1888, back in Manhattan, Leah has the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children take Kate's sons away from her and hold her in jail. The jail in New York was called the Tombs. Kate was jailed there. So was Victoria Woodhull.
Oh yeah, I remember that story.
They were but not at the same time. So Kate is held in the Tombs for drunkenness and flagrant neglect of her maternal duties. Now, Maggie is in England. July 21st, 1888, she orchestrates a ruse from London. Maggie telegraphs New York City under the name of Kate Fox's brother-in-law. Okay, because Kate can't get custody of her children, but her deceased husband's brother, being a male, could his claim on custody would trump all. So Maggie pretends in a telegraph she is Kate's brother-in-law. She's Henry Jenkins' brother. And she says in this telegraph, I will be the guardianship of my nephews. I want you to put them on a boat. Isabella Beecher Hooker, who is sister of Harriet Beecher Hooker. Isabella Beecher Hooker was a front and center spiritualist. And he says, Maggie writes, Isabella Beecher Hooker and her husband, John Hooker, very, very famous guy, will escort the children. Okay. So Maggie, it's the ruse, but Isabella Beecher Hooker and her husband are on board.
Okay.
They spring the kids away from Leah because Leah took the kids, Kate's boys, and they spring Kate from jail. They pay her bail. Oh. Secretly, under another name, they put Kate on the boat. So they've got Kate Fox, her two sons, Isabella Beecher Hooker, one of the most famous families in America, and her husband, John, and they sail secretly to England.
Oh my goodness.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
So unfortunately, Kate doesn't stay in England and ends up coming back to the United States.
Oh no.
It's crazy. And Maggie is so upset with Leah. Right? Mm-hmm. So she decides to destroy Leah. How does Maggie destroy Leah? Leah is famous. You know this. Leah's the queen of spiritualism, right? She's like Mother Mary.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
She's up there. And Maggie is so mad at being dragged around and plied with alcohol when she was a teenager, Kate was a child, put in dark seances with drunk men and men grabbing their knees and their toes, right? Maggie is so angry. She decides to say that spiritualism is phony.
That's when that happened. That's why it happened.
And that is why it happened. So Maggie comes back to the United States. She writes a book, Death Blow to Spiritualism.
Oh, Maggie.
And then, so she, in New York City's Academy of Music, right? There's a lot, Maggie contacts the press. There's a lot of press. Maggie stands, Kate's quiet. You know, she's struggling with alcoholism. Maggie is angry. And she says, it's all a ruse. There was never a spirit. There was never a peddler. We made the sounds with our toes. Yeah. And so when people have come to me and said, well, the founder renounced spiritualism. She said it was all a ruse. People don't continue reading.
She did it for a short time. She came back.
And so Maggie felt, so badly because she knew how many people she'd helped. How many grief-stricken people she'd helped. She brought 3 children and loved, all kinds of loved ones in spirit. And so she didn't want to ruin it for everybody. So that was November 15th, 1888. A year later, November 16th, 1889, in a letter from 128th West 43rd Street. Can you tell I've read a lot of letters? I've read a lot of documents. Maggie Fox Kane recanted her denouncement of spiritualism and of her own mediumship. Then March 31st, 1890, in Boston at Wells Memorial Hall, Shawmut Lyceum, 42nd anniversary of modern spiritualism, while on the platform, Maggie Fox filled the hall with raps and spirit.
Wow.
Yeah. Now,
Wow.
Leah is so upset by what Maggie has done. November 1st, she just bursts. She's so angry. November 1st, 1890, Leah Fox Fish Brown passes into spirit.
Oh, my goodness.
She's so mad. She is so, so mad at Maggie.
Mm.
And what happened? She'd gone back to Hydesville to visit their brother, David Fox, who still had a peppermint farm. And this is right before she passed. And David said, "Oh, forgive Maggie. Just forgive her. Come on, your family, your sisters, just forgive her." And she says, "I can't. David, I can't. I can't forgive her." And David's forgive her. Anyway, Leah goes back to New York City, and she notices, she comes home, right, to her loving husband. A vase is missing in one of her parlors.
Mm-hmm.
So she says to the parlor maid, "Where is that vase?" And the parlor maid said, "Oh, I was dusting and I broke it. You've got so many more, I didn't bother telling you." Well, Leah popped a cork and split a gut. She screamed and yelled and was just so furious. Hours after that, she died.
Wow.
Then July 2nd, 1892, 609 Columbia Avenue, Kate Fox Jenkins passes into spirit.
Wow.
And her son, I don't know which one, I forgot. One of her sons sends for the tailors. He went to get the tailors. Then March 8th, 1893, Maggie passes into spirit. Now, March 8th, 1893, Maggie passes into spirit. Just months after that, November 3rd, 1893, in Washington, D.C., the National Spiritualist Association, now it's called the National Spiritualist Association of Churches, NSAC, legitimizes, codifies spiritualism as a legal religion. In 1904, children found the peddler's skeleton.
Yes.
1904, and the Boston Journal, November 22nd, 1904, you can look it up. The Boston Journal reported that the wall had fallen out, and what they'd realized was that Mr. Bell had built a separate wall. Why they never could find the peddler's body in the Hydesville house. Because
I think these women could have just waited. Yeah.
Right. Well, anyway. So
wow.
That's all I have to share for this evening.
Wow, honey. That's amazing, Robin. It's like we've heard the full story. I've heard so many little bits and pieces of it and never knew the full amount. They were human beings. They were under a tremendous amount of pressure. They were kind of used a little bit, manipulated a little bit, but they helped a lot of people and really got the foundation of spiritualism there with all their work. So
yes,
thank you so much for sharing all of this.
You're
Holy
welcome.
cow.
And if folks have questions, send them or post them to Nancy, and I will try and answer you.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear from you guys. Whether you're hearing this live or recorded, Nancy at angelscapes.net. And I'll send it to Robin and get the answers. Robin, you're going to be doing something. You're preparing now to do something in the summer at Camp Etna up in Maine.
Yes. July 8th up at Camp Etna in Maine. I'm giving a talk that gives the teachings of Jesus from the Aramaic Bible, the Peshitta text that Dr. George Lamsa who spoke Aramaic, translated.
Mhm.
It was his first language. And Dr. Rocco Errico, also a minister, has a school which I have been studying in. And Mark Thomas, Reverend Mark Thomas, has classes on this as well.
Great.
So, so it talks about, what I'm going to do is talk about sort of the history, how the teachings of Jesus became so twisted, and how we became so out of touch with what Jesus's mission really was and what he really said. It's, Jesus never said anything divisive, and everything was out of love and healing. And so I'm going to talk about, go back in history and take you through history, from the time of Jesus's crucifixion and then resurrection, and following that through, and then taking some popular prayers that we say in churches, and show you the Aramaic translation of them. And what we find is that in this translation, we find how they absolutely dovetail with the principles and teachings of spiritualism.
Oh my goodness, that is beautiful.
And so
it's beautiful.
And many spiritualists think that they can't say they believe in Jesus, or they can't say, they can't study the Beatitudes or recite the Lord's Prayer. And what we find is that they're really, really accessible, and they're accessible to everybody.
Well, that's going to be an awesome class, really.
So July 8th, Camp Etna. You can find the information on the website. And
yeah, you can Google Camp Etna. I've done that before, but and she'll be posted. Robin's class will be posted and set up. I'm planning on going. I really hope everything comes together. I'm excited.
Great. And Joanne Fleiderer is also teaching a course, Writing from the Heart, a great course which I've taken. And pastor of the Swampscott Church of Spiritualism, Pastor Jason Bush, and he is going to be teaching all that week. He'll be teaching Saturday evening, July 8th, and he'll be teaching all week long. So come join us in Maine. There's a beautiful pond, great trails.
And there's a hotel. You can rent rooms there too, if you need a place to stay.
You can. Yeah, there are rooms to rent, and it's just a wonderful time. Come sit out on the porch with us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Come sit on the porch, hang out, exchange stories, and have just have a good old time.
Oh yeah, I've served at the church a few years ago for those long weeks, and there's so many people, so many thoughts and ideas coming in and out. So very excited. I really recommend people to travel up and listen up.
Thought exchange with us. We're welcome.
Terrific. So Bernie's been watching us. He's been loving making these, Bernie Crummis, he's been making all kinds of comments. He's been to Camp Edna. He loved listening to you. So I wanted to thanks Bernie for coming on. Many people were coming on today. Thank you again, Robin, for coming on. And this is great information that's out there now. And thank you so much. And when you're caught up with your work, we'll have you come back on.
Okay, I would like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great, and I wanted to tell everybody, use these tools to understand your own spiritual path and your own spiritual journey. And how do you fit into spiritualism? How do you fit into the new way of looking at life, seeing the invisibles and having it make meaning to you? This is a journey of your soul as much as it is the Fox sisters or any of us. So you're welcome to, listen to more podcasts, ask questions, and learn about this incredible movement. And so till the next episode, stay strong, stay safe, and stay in life.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Angelscapes podcast. We hope you've gained new insights and inspiration for your journey to uncover and access your soul's power. For more information and a deeper dive into finding clarity in your life, go to angelscapes.com. Remember to subscribe so you can be part of the discussion. It may just change your life. See you next time.